From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Masters of the Universe, released in 1987, and it's one of my favorites. It stars Dolph Lundgren and Frank Langella. This movie is the live-action answer to the early 80s animated TV series He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. In this movie, a hero named He-Man, sworn to defend planet Eternia and the doorway to the powers of the universe, Castle Grayskull, accidentally travel with his band of Eternians to planet Earth in order to recover a cosmic key that will defeat his enemy Skeletor and stop him from ruling the universe. My rating is an 8.1, so I stand in a slightly skewed minority of people who actually like this movie and enjoy it a lot. In fact, this is one of my favorite movies. Masters of the Universe wasn't actually the movie that I wanted or expected, but I still enjoyed it, and I watch it several times a year if I can. The tone of this movie is quite darker than fans expected, now devoid of its bold color that we were accustomed to on the animated TV show. And even though it wasn't realistic to repeat that, the filmmakers went in a completely different direction, creating a more darker alternative universe with an apocalyptic feel. I actually enjoyed that difference. In many ways, the dark concepts were both creative and foreshadows what live-action hero movies would eventually become, a vast departure from the original work. Many people complained about the title being different in the movie than in the TV show. The title of this film is accurate, in my opinion, because He-Man is not really the main character of the film. He doesn't really even show up very often in the film. The movie actually focuses on two people. That is Julie, who is an Earthling that finds the cosmic key, and Skeletor, the evil sorcerer from planet Eternia. Skeletor is actually my main reason for liking this film. If you're not familiar with the 80s animated TV show, Skeletor is an evil sorcerer who is hell-bent on ruling Eternia and the universe. Many critics expressed that they felt the character was overacted, but I feel it was done beautifully. Skeletor is a psycho who's not just come to power, but he's afraid of it being taken away. He's lost his mind. When one of his men begged for mercy, he replies, "I'm not in a giving vein this day," which is a modified version from Shakespeare's Richard III, who suffers the same psychology. They're both deformed, unmerciful, and afraid of losing power, feeling as if they've been denied of it for so long. He's crazy, and that's what's fun about watching a character like that, because hopefully we don't actually deal with people like that in our daily lives. I hope. I hope none of you have to do that. And so it really makes him very, very entertaining. The other thing to note about Skeletor is that he is obsessed with things being his. It's one of the things he's obsessed with. He's obsessed with having everything that he never even gives an inch to his followers. And it's really laughable how many times he says something is his, or he goes, "Mine." He just says, "Mine, it's mine." And you could actually make a drinking game out of that. My second favorite character in this movie is Blade, who is one of Skeletor's mercenaries. He doesn't get a lot of screen time, but when he's there, he brings a sense of excitement to the screen. And you don't really get to know much about him except for one line that he says just before he fights He-Man, pretty much saying that he's dreamt of this moment that they could duel each other. And it just makes him stand out amongst the whole crowd of characters in this film. So, I don't know, I really like that guy. It makes you really wonder how far back that rivalry goes. Blade is actually a part of a team that Skeletor calls a curious quartet. These are the mercenaries that are sent to retrieve He-Man and the cosmic key. We have Karg, Sarad, and Beastman. Beastman to me was a little bit of a disappointment, being a fan of the show. In the show, Beastman plays a really big part. being sort of like a sidekick to Skeletor and being able to control animals and chime in every once in a while. But in this movie, he just grunts pretty much all the time. So instead of being a beast man, he's more like a beast that just understands men. So his role was greatly diminished. I think having him there was more of a nostalgic nod than actually having a character that meant something to the story. Let's talk about He-Man. He-Man is actually, he's supposed to be the star of this film, but he's hardly in it. In fact, if you didn't know about the TV show before seeing this movie, you wouldn't know that He-Man is actually a prince, and he uses his magical sword to become He-Man. They never explain this, and they never talk about this in the movie. In fact, he just appears to be heroic, and he's just a generic soldier with no special powers. Much of He-Man's backstory is just lost in this movie, and so leaves you wondering, who is this guy and why should we watch him? He-Man himself in this movie appears dirty and sporting a mullet instead of the golden bob that fans were accustomed to seeing on the TV show. He still looked good, but they kept him all lathered up in baby oil and to sport He-Man's trademark muscles, which I'm sure wasn't easy to do throughout the entire shooting of this film. The actor playing He-Man is Dolph Lundgren, who was criticized for his accent in this movie, which I didn't hear at all. He did a fine job, in my opinion. There was rumors that the filmmakers were even thinking about replacing him with a voice actor, which I'm kind of glad they didn't, because that would have really doomed the movie even further than it had been. Well, it would have doomed me for not liking it as much, because there's something that's taken away with voice acting, that just let the actor talk, and if he or she wasn't the right person to play the part, you should not have hired them in the first place. That's my opinion on voice acting. Through another person's acting, unless it's a masked situation like David Prowse doing the suit for Darth Vader and James Earl Jones doing the voice for Darth Vader. It makes sense there. It doesn't make sense to get a perfectly normal human being and do a voiceover for that. If someone's wearing a mask, do a voiceover. If they're not, then don't. That's what I think. So now let's talk about the Eternians. The Eternians are interesting in this movie. They're really kind of there for nostalgic reasons or just to nod the TV show again. They really don't do much, and they are He-Man's comrades in the war against Skeletor, Tila, and Man-at-Arms. It was nice to see them in the film, but again, they just don't do anything. The next person I'd like to talk about is Gwildor. Gwildor is the inventor of the Cosmic Key and serves as the plucky comic relief here. And for people who remember the show, they believe that he's there to replace a character by the name of Orko, who is the TV show's blubbering magician. I suppose introducing Gwildor was a good idea to avoid dealing with trying to pull off a floating character on a limited budget. The Earthlings, Julie and Kevin, are two adorable teenagers who find the Cosmic Key and attract the attention of Skeletor's forces. These characters are greatly developed, especially Julie, and her story really dominates the film's direction. She's mourning the loss of her parents who died in a plane crash. I feel like, in a way, having the Earthlings there is like putting a second movie in there. The next person I wanted to talk about was Evil-Lyn. She's, oh my god, she was one of my favorite characters from the TV show, and I like her in this movie. And I'm bordering on loving her on in this movie too. She's played completely different than how she was in the TV show. The TV show, she was really over the top, loud, cackling, bellowing out to somebody always. And in this movie, she's really cool and collected. And then she has her moments where she's enraged and she emotes evil, but she doesn't have as much dialogue as I would have liked for her to have had. And just a little bit more meat for her to dig in, her character to dig into. In this movie, she's really, really loyal to Skeletor, even though he's not always nice to her. However, in the TV show, and I hate to bring up the TV show all the time, but it kind of just lets you know where they steered away from the original material. In the TV show, she's eventually working on a rebellious scheme to become the most powerful. And the TV show, there was like this idea that maybe there was a romance between Evil-Lyn and Skeletor. And I believe, the filmmakers were kind of giving us that kind of, or the fans, kind of a little nod, like, yeah, they do kind of have a weird relationship going on, because there's a scene where Evil-Lyn is actually sitting in front of him like a cat while she's giving him a report. Originally, the role was offered to Sarah Douglas, who was previously in Superman 2. I think she looks so much like the actual Evil-Lyn. I think she would have made a great match. However, I believe that Meg Foster, who ended up playing the role, did a fantastic job. One of the characters of note to mention would be Detective Lubeck, who was played by James Tolkien. This character was meant to be really over the top and annoying, but he actually provides a little bit of comedy during the film, which is good. I mean, he goes all in. You see him, as you see him perform, he's really into his role. The best part of the movie for me was Skeletor's monologue at the end of the movie. I can pretty much recite every word. I love it. He's out of his gourd in that particular scene, and it's just priceless. It just tickles me, and it's exactly what I thought Skeletor would act like if he got power. The powers of the universe. That's what Skeletor would do. The worst for me was some of the makeup. The makeup for Gwildor and Beastman, I thought it was really gross looking, and I would not have made that particular makeup choice for the character design. And for Gwildor, even though there were moments when he was really adorable, there's a scene where he's like covered in mud and there's gravy in his beard, and it's just disgusting. If we could fix this movie, my wish list would be to keep the story on Eternia. I would love to have seen the live action view of Eternia's landscapes. And in the show, they were really incredibly creative. I wish we could have learned more about his mysteries and lores and alien creatures. We could have learned more about Prince Adam and the core of his psychological profile. Like, what are the differences between Adam and He-Man? If there are any, are they the same? Or is there something a little extra that's added to Adam to make him become He-Man? Would love to know that. I wish that He-Man had more of a personal moment for us to get to know him, as we did with Skeletor. Just one scene with him talking about something personal, his parents, maybe a flashback to when he was a kid. You get the sense that he's loyal to the sorceress and he's a good guy, but we'd like to know exactly why. And it doesn't take a whole lot, maybe 5 minutes of storytelling. Just a little something, maybe 2 lines of dialogue. And to be honest, this movie has a lot of flaws, but I enjoy it so much. And it boils down to 2 main reasons for really loving this movie. Is seeing Dolph Lundgren and Frank Langella they're two of my favorite actors. Dolph is my guilty pleasure ever since Vaki 4, and I was just one of those kids that loved Skeletor. And I also love the actor Frank Langella. I love his work. So to me, he delivers that over-the-top character on the screen for me. At the ending is a little sappy and completely unrealistic, but it had me crying, and it also had me smiling. I was actually happy at the end of this movie. So the rating tally, for enjoyment, I absolutely enjoyed the costume details, a few of the makeup treatments, and one of the great grand sets that they had of the Castle Grayskull's throne room was absolutely gorgeous. And I think that was all they could really afford with the budget. And they took every angle of that castle, throne room. They took every angle that they could and put that on screen. So that was beautifully done. It starts out very action-packed, and then it nearly stands still as soon as the characters are on Earth, New Jersey to be exact. And there were a few unnecessary scenes and jokes that could have been deleted, and it wouldn't have changed the story one bit. The story was decent, not amazing, but decent. So the challenge in this case, the villain. Loved the villain, of course. Skeletor, for me, really makes this movie and just gobbles up the screen time with his character. Empathy, not so much. I'm a fan of He-Man, but I didn't feel as if his character was strong enough for this film. The movie had too many characters, and it suffered from not really knowing its audience. It was marketing to kids for toy sales. They were trying to market to a new group of kids, but it was too close to when the show had been out. The funniest thing is that the actual TV show had the exact formula that they needed to make this film a success. The fight scenes weren't shot very well, okay? So there was writing issues, editing issues, and I think what happened was that they just ran out of money. They did spend a lot of money on this costumes and set design and makeup, and it shows, and I can appreciate that. The performances were good by some, but not entirely good by all the cast, so it just ends up being okay. And that sums up my review. I hope you liked it. Please make sure to subscribe to this channel. I'll be posting many more reviews. And let's keep this discussion going. Leave your rating for the movie and your reasons why in the comment section. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.